feel like this stretch, this is a big game for us. I think we've struggled in the fact that we're able to play one good game and then we play a bad game, then we play a good game, then we play a bad game. So I think for us is like, we got to find a way to be able to stack really good games together. And then we go on the road and, we're on a back-to-back, which is just a challenge in itself. No matter who you're playing, we play Connecticut, then we play New York. So I think Steph's message was, yes, All-Stars coming up, that break's coming up, but our focus is on these 3 games that we have left. So in that sense, I do think it's critical that our focus just remains on the game in front of us, and I feel like that's what everybody in the locker room is doing.
It's late in the game. The outcome has been decided for a long, long time. After Hidroidai, the final buzzer sounds. The players go through the motions, the handshakes, the quiet, walk back to the locker room. But the real story, the one that the cameras barely catch, is just beginning to unfold. Hours later, in a sterile, quiet press conference room, a reporter asks Paige Bueckers a simple question about Caitlin Clark's defensive performance against her team. And Paige, she just looks back. She pauses, and then she gives an answer that says more than an entire interview ever could. She said, "You just answered the question. She's obviously just a very smart basketball player, so she'll get out and deny passing lanes. But yeah, that's it. That's the moment the mask slipped. For weeks, we've heard the professional answers. We've been told it's just another game, that it's team versus team, not player versus player. But in that moment, with that terse, frustrated dismissal, Paige Bueckers finally broke her silence. And what she revealed tells us everything about the brutal reality of this rivalry, right after one of the most humiliating losses of her young career. We're going to decode what that moment really means and why it changes everything for the future of the WNBA's main event. This is the story behind the story. And for us, the narrative analysts, moments like these are where the truth really lives. If you believe the real game is played as much in the mind as it is on the court, do me a favor and smash that like button. It shows us we're on the right track and that you want the real story. All right, let's connect the dots. To understand the weight of that game comment, we have to rewind the clock. This wasn't just any regular season game. This was the one circled on every calendar since the WNBA draft. Clark versus Bueckers, Part 1. The professional debut of a rivalry that has been brewing for years. These two have been linked since they were playing on USA basketball teams together in middle and high school. They chose different paths in college, Clark to Iowa, Bueckers to the dynasty at UConn. But their careers were always destined to collide on the biggest stages. And they did. In college, Clark got the better of their matchups, holding a 2-to-1 advantage, including that legendary 71-69 victory in the 2024 Final Four that sent Bueckers and UConn home. So, coming into this first professional showdown, the narrative was already set. This was Bueckers' chance at redemption. It was Clark's chance to prove her college dominance was no fluke. With both players being consecutive #1 overall picks, the league, the fans, and the media had poured gasoline on this fire for months. ABC even picked up the broadcast nationally, knowing this matchup was pure box office gold. This wasn't just a game, it was an event, and that level of pressure, that level of hype, it sets the stage for either a legendary performance or a complete collapse. And what unfolded at Gainbridge Fieldhouse was nothing short of a complete and total dismantling. This is what you have to understand. The final score was 102-83. But that number doesn't even begin to tell the story of the on-court humiliation. The Dallas Wings didn't just lose a basketball game, they were surgically taken apart by a team that finally decided to play the game its rookie superstar wanted to play. It all happened in the second quarter. After a competitive first, the Fever didn't just flip a switch. They blew the entire fuse box. Coach Stephanie White finally unleashed Clark, letting her push the pace and run the offense exactly how she's been wanting to all season. The result? Absolute chaos for Dallas. The Fever dropped a franchise record 64 points in the first half alone. They outscored the Wings 36-15 in that second quarter. A blistering run that left Dallas completely shell-shocked.
Mitchell bounces, Boston, one more time. This time Mitchell delivering, and Boston up to 13 points. Indiana shooting 66%.
It was a masterclass in transition basketball. The touchdown passes that were a staple for Clark at Iowa were suddenly on full display in the pros. She was finding teammates with full-court dimes that nobody saw coming. The ball movement was electric. The Fever tied a franchise record with 30 assists in the game, and 13 of those came from Clark herself.
Cunningham the rebound. Cunningham swiftly up the floor, finds Howard for two. Sophie Cunningham making a huge impact off the bench, and Dallas will take a timeout.
In this lineup, Natasha Howard is the quickest post player.
This is the key detail that the box score watchers miss. It wasn't just Clark having a good game. Her energy and her vision elevated everyone around her. Kelsey Mitchell caught fire, scoring 20 points and extending her double-digit scoring streak to 21 straight games. Aliyah Boston was dominating the paint, feeding off perfect passes from Clark. Natasha Howard was running the floor for 18 points on hyper-efficient shooting. The whole team was firing on all cylinders.
Good dub. 2 in a row. 2 more to All-Star. Let's go.
W. I'll figure it out, so you already know what's coming. Bow, bow, bow! On to the next. Hell yeah! Can you use that one? Let's go, baby! W! Now we gotta go get another one.
This was Fever basketball, the style of play they had promised, but, until this point, had only shown in short, frustrating spurts. And at the center of it all was Clark, not just scoring, but conducting an orchestra of offense while simultaneously putting together one of the most unique stat lines in league history. She finished with 14 points, those 13 assists, and 5 steals. And this is a critical piece of the puzzle. With that performance, Caitlin Clark became the only player in the entire history of the WNBA to record that specific stat line twice. She now stands alone. So while Paige Bueckers was fighting for every shot, Caitlin Clark was literally rewriting the record books in front of her. That's not a loss. That's a statement. Now, for those of us tracking the behind-the-scenes drama all season, this explosion of offensive firepower from the Fever makes the story even more compelling. Because what makes the blowout so much worse for Dallas is that the Indiana Fever team they faced should have been at its most vulnerable. Just days before this record-shattering performance, the entire organization felt like it was on the verge of a meltdown. The team was trapped in a maddening cycle of inconsistency. As Clark herself admitted, they couldn't stack good games. Together, they'd have a great win, then follow it up with an embarrassing loss.
Lee Rue the other night had a season-high 18 points. Here's Boston turning the corner. Dishing to Hull. Extra feed Clark. A deep three. You bet! And he actually brought up stats from a shooting slump Steph Curry went through. She said that made her feel a lot better. That pass will as well. Right on the money to Mitchell.
Cunningham attacked the closeout.
Clark the rejection of Quinterly. Clark the flick ahead. Oh, beautifully done. Touchdown Fever.
Clark herself was in the middle of a frustrating shooting slump. She was getting good looks, shots she knows she can make, but they just weren't falling. She was leaning on her work ethic and even comparing her struggles to slumps Steph Curry has gone through just to keep her confidence up.
You know, it can be frustrating when your shot isn't going in the way that you want it to, but then like I look at the box and it's like I'm really 4 shots away from having a really good game, a really good shooting game. So that's where you find your confidence, and I know those are shots that I can make, and I'm never going to stop shooting. So, I mean, until I break out of it, I'm just going to keep launching, and that's all I know, and I'm still confident in everything that I can do.
But the on-court struggles were just a symptom of a much deeper issue. Okay, now we have to get into the rumors and reports that were swirling around the team, because it's central to this story. For weeks, there had been talk of a serious philosophical war happening within the organization. Reports and our own analysis of sideline interactions suggested a deep conflict over the team's pace of play. Clark wanted to run. She wanted to push the tempo and create the exact kind of fast break offense we saw against Dallas. But the system in place a holdover from a previous coaching philosophy, was often slower and more controlled. This wasn't just a minor disagreement. It was a fundamental clash of basketball identities. The tension finally boiled over in that now infamous game against the Atlanta Dream. Cameras caught a visibly intense and heated exchange between Clark and coach Stephanie White on the sideline.
Here's Clark being hawked by Isaiah James. Clark sidestepping three is good. Clark backing down Quinterly. 6 to shoot, fading away and dropping it in. Beautiful. Here's Clark off the screen, through the lane, feeds Howard. Another assist for Clark. That's 13 as Howard is up to 18 points.
That moment laid the internal conflict bare for the whole world to see. It confirmed what many of us narrative analysts already suspected. Something was off in that locker room. There was friction. So when the Dallas Wings prepared for this game, they weren't just preparing for Caitlin Clark. They were preparing for a team that seemed to be at war with itself, a team struggling with slumps, lineup changes, and a fractured identity. They should have been able to capitalize on that chaos. Instead, they walked straight into a buzzsaw. The Fever didn't just resolve their internal conflict. They weaponized the resolution, and Dallas paid the price. So you have a team that should have been in chaos, suddenly playing the most beautiful basketball of their season. But the humiliation for Dallas wasn't just on the offensive end. What the final score doesn't fully capture, and what truly sets the stage for Paige Bueckers' post-game frustration, was the defensive masterclass that Caitlin Clark and the Fever put on. This is the tipping point. While everyone was mesmerized by the touchdown passes and the franchise records falling, Clark was quietly having one of the best defensive games of her career. She tied her career high with 5 steals. She was a complete menace in the passing lanes, anticipating the Wings' next move before they even made it. She became only the 5th player in WNBA history to have multiple games with at least 10 points, 10 assists, and 5 steals. This wasn't just good offense. This was a complete two-way domination. The most telling example of this was a single play that perfectly summarized the game. Clark recorded a huge block on defense, immediately secured the ball, and without a moment's hesitation, launched a full-court pass to Sophie Cunningham for an easy, fast break score, timed to the rejection of Quinterly. That one sequence showed everything. Her defensive awareness, her ability to turn defense into instant offense, and the team-wide energy that Dallas simply could not match. But the ultimate proof of the Fever's defensive chokehold is what they did to the Wings' star player, Arike Ogunbowale. For those who follow the league, you know Arike is a walking bucket. She's an explosive scorer who can take over a game at any moment. But in this game, she was a complete non-factor. The Tuahi Fever's team defense, spearheaded by Clark's disruption at the point of attack, made her totally ineffective. And here are the brutal numbers. Arike Ogunbowale, in her return from injury, went 0 for 10 from the field. She finished with only 2 points. That is a complete and total shutdown of a star player. When your best player is rendered useless and the opposing point guard is picking you apart on both ends of the floor, the frustration starts to build. It's no longer just about the score. It becomes personal, and that is the exact context you need to understand what happened next in that press conference room. And that brings us to the moment. The game is over, the stats are in the books. Paige Bueckers, a fierce competitor and the face of the Dallas Wings, sits down to face the media. She's composed, she's professional, but you can feel the tension. A reporter asks her about Clark's defensive game, the 5 steals, the disruption, the shutdown of her star teammate. And this is where the mask of professional courtesy, the one all athletes wear, finally cracks. Let's play what she said, and I want you to listen not just to the words, but to the space between them. The tone, the finality. Visual cue, show a stylized quote graphic on screen. As Jax speaks each line, that line highlights. Jax narrating the quote slowly, with pauses. The reporter asks the question. Paige pauses and says, "You just answered the question. Let's stop right there. That's not an answer. That's a deflection. It's a verbal stiff arm. It's the equivalent of saying, 'Next question.' It immediately tells you she does not want to engage on this topic. There's a sharp, defensive edge to it. She's frustrated that she even has to address it. Then, she continues, almost like she knows she has to say something. Jax, narrating the quote, "She's obviously just a very smart basketball player, so she'll get out and deny passing lanes." This is the obligatory praise. It's the bare minimum you say about a competitor. But listen to the language. Obviously, just a very smart basketball player. It almost minimizes the performance. It frames it as something simple and expected, not the game-wrecking, two-way dominance we all just witnessed. It's faint praise, delivered because the silence would be worse. And then comes the final, most revealing part. Jax, narrating the quote, with a long pause before the last words. But yeah, that's it. That's the entire story. Those 2 syllables. But yeah, that is the sound of utter defeat. It's a verbal shrug. It's the period at the end of a sentence she never wanted to speak. It says, "I have no answer for what happened tonight. I can't explain it. I don't want to talk about it. And I have nothing left to give you on this topic." In that moment, Paige Bueckers wasn't a #1 pick or a media darling. She was a competitor who had been thoroughly and completely beaten on a national stage by her biggest rival, and for a split second, she let the entire world see it. The truth wasn't in some long, elaborate answer. The truth was in that exhausted, frustrated, 2-word dismissal. So, what do we do with this moment? How do we fit this raw, unfiltered frustration into the larger picture of their rivalry? For years, both players have been incredibly careful and professional when speaking about each other. They've built a public narrative of mutual respect, a story of 2 friends who just happen to be elite competitors. We've heard it time and time again. They've known each other since middle school, played on national teams together. In interviews, Clark is always complimentary of Bueckers' game, admiring her smooth, mature style of play that has been consistent since they were kids.
Hey, Caitlin. You've known Paige since middle school, AAU. You guys were on the U19 World Cup team together. Is there anything that maybe stood out then about her, whether it be on or off the court, that maybe still reigns true today?
I mean, I feel like she's played in the same manner that she, has since she was, whether we were on the U16 team together, U19 team together, whether it was me watching her in AAU, like she's always just been smooth. She takes what the game gives her. Her midi has always been as nice as it's been this year. She's just she just plays way older than she is. Like she's confident, she's smooth, she just does everything at a high level, can score from all 3 levels, and that's how she's always played, and that's obviously translated really well.
This is the official story, the one they are both comfortable telling. It's a narrative of respect and support. Clark has said, "We've always been friends. I wouldn't say we're best friends and talk all the time. I've always been a fan of hers and always been supportive." And Bueckers has echoed that sentiment, consistently trying to downplay the one-on-one angle. She's famous for saying, "We both know it's not Paige versus Caitlin. It's the fever versus the wings." And for a long time, that's what we all accepted. But this is why we analyze the narrative. Because the story told in a prepared statement is often very different from the truth revealed under pressure. The "but yeah" moment doesn't erase their history of friendship, but it puts a massive asterisk next to it. It suggests that when the lights are brightest and the stakes are highest, the fierce competitor inside of them takes over, the professional. Rivalry is so intense that it can momentarily eclipse everything else. The question for us, as analysts, is no longer if there's a real, fiery rivalry beneath the surface. After that press conference, we know there is. The new question is, how deep does it go? Is the "it's not personal" line just good public relations? That one terse, dismissive comment from Bueckers suggests that after a 19-point blowout, where her rival set records and her own team's star was completely neutralized, it felt incredibly personal. And that changes the entire dynamic of this story going forward. That single, tense press conference changed the narrative. It's no longer just about who is the better player. Now, it's about pride, it's about respect, and it's about retaliation. While the Fever were celebrating in their locker room, securing their second straight win, and finally looking like the team they were supposed to be.
Feel like this was one of their best games as far as playing Fever basketball, which is a fast-paced style of basketball. They played Fever basketball for, I would say, about 75 to 80% of the game, and we have obviously seen this style of basketball, the style of basketball that we all know and love from the Indiana Fever, but we have only really seen it in short spurts. There have been so many games and so many times throughout this season where it feels like the Fever system is a slow down basketball type of system. Their offense wasn't running smoothly, but in this game, they were playing quick. They were moving the ball around. They had so many points off of the fast break.
The Dallas Wings were left to process a public beatdown. And this story is far from over. In fact, it's just getting started. The Deep Search file confirms that these two teams are scheduled to meet 2 more times this regular season. And the next matchup, on August 1st, is set to take place in Dallas. But here's the detail that raises the stakes to a whole new level. That rematch in Dallas is expected to draw over 20,000 fans. Let that sink in. After being dismantled on national television, after their star player was shut down, and after their own #1 pick showed a rare moment of public frustration directly aimed at her rival, Paige Bueckers and the Dallas Wings will have to face the Fever again, this time on their home court, in front of one of the largest crowds of the WNBA season. The pressure will be immense. The narrative will be all about their response. Will they come out with a new strategy? Will they play with more physicality? Will they be looking for revenge? You can bet that every single player on that Wings roster has this date circled. This loss wasn't just a mark in the L column. It was an indictment of their strategy and their toughness. What do you think happens in a high-stakes rematch like that? Does Dallas find a way to answer? Or does Clark's system prove to be unbeatable for them? Let me know your prediction for the Dallas game in the comments below. Before that, they'll even see each other at the WNBA All-Star Game on July 19th. While they'll be teammates there, every interaction will now be viewed through this new lens of tension. The professional smiles will be there, but we, the narrative analysts, will know what's simmering just beneath the surface. This rivalry has found its edge. So, what's the real truth that came out? It's not that these two players hate each other. It's that the intensity of their rivalry is far more real and far more potent than the professional narrative has ever allowed for. The record-breaking performance, the historic blowout, and the defensive shutdown all combined to create a moment of immense pressure. And under that pressure, the carefully constructed facade cracked. Paige Bueckers' short, dismissive comment wasn't just an answer to a question, it was an unfiltered glimpse into the heart of a true competitor in a moment of defeat. It added a layer of raw, personal tension to this matchup that will now follow them into every future game, turning the WNBA's biggest rivalry into must-see television. The story is no longer just about basketball, it's about the psychological battle that will define the league for years to come. So, what's your take on all this? Do you believe Paige Bueckers' comment was a sign of genuine animosity simmering beneath the surface? Or was it simply a fierce competitor hating a bad loss in the heat of the moment? Get in the comments and let us know your analysis. What did Paige's comment really mean? We will be tracking every move in this evolving saga, including a full deep dive breakdown of that 20,000 fan rematch in Dallas. To make sure you don't miss what happens next, be sure to subscribe and click that notification bell. And finally, if you have a friend who loves to connect the dots and analyze the story behind the game, do them a favor and share this video. Help us grow the community of narrative analysts.